Okay, thank you very much for coming. I am Ravit Hecht. I am a Haaretz journalist. I'm really honored and excited to be here. And before introducing my respectable colleagues to the panel, I would like to say a few words, and then we will begin. Okay. A few days ago, I saw a survey published in one of the Israeli newspapers. It was a relatively marginal survey that didn't make the headlines in Israel. 400 teenagers were asked how they define themselves politically. 52% stated that they are absolute supporters of the rights. Half of them expressed support for price tag, action against Arabs. The great majority of all responders said that Israel's Jewish character must be strengthened at the expense of its democratic character. Only 9% said that they define themselves as left-wing. The truth is that I didn't need this survey to understand which way Israel is heading. The survey simply quantifies in numbers what I very well know from the younger generation in my own family, and from years of teaching, when I got to know hundreds of young Israelis. The truth is that children in Israel have been growing up for 2 decades now in a constant atmosphere of no peace. And as they grow up, they turn their backs on hope and get dragged into nationalism, separatism, and violence. I would like to conclude on a personal note. In spite of the very difficult years the left in Israel is going through and the dark future it's facing, I'm not giving up. To those who curse the peace camp, blacken it, try to trample its values, and educate and hate to it, I say what I learned from the late Yossi Sarid, one of the leaders of the peace camp who passed away last week. We will stay in Israel, even after you. Thank you. Okay, let's begin. Well, I want to address the first question to you, Merav Michaeli, member of Knesset, the faction chair of the Zionist Union. Menachem Begin, let's go back to the history, lost 8 election campaigns before winning and becoming the first right-wing prime minister of Israel. Historians agree that this revolution occurred thanks to the alliance he forged with the Sephardic Mizrahi Jews in Israel who felt discriminated and ignored by the labor regime there. I want to ask you, why doesn't your party take inspiration from this action and aspire to create new political alliances, above all with the Arab voters?
So thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate you on what you said in your opening remarks. It's extremely important, and I think we can all subscribe to this saying, we're not going anywhere.
No.
And we'll be not only in Israel after them, but in a better Israel
with them,
of course. But we'll make room for everyone, unlike what they are trying to do to us. I think labor, first of all, I just don't agree. I disagree with what you're saying. I think labor is totally committed. Only this last Wednesday, we voted for Yosef Jabarin's legislation proposal that was a proposal for a declaration of equality for the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel in every sphere of life. We supported it. It was a faction decision, and we stand behind it. And we totally see ourselves as allies of, I mean, not only allies, I mean, it's much beyond that. For me, Israeli Arab citizens are fellow citizens just as any other Israeli citizen is in Israel, and it's the same for everyone in the Zionist camp. And I would say moreover, when Labor decided to go with the movement of Tzipi Livni together. There was some kind of discomfort among parts of the left or some of the Arab society about the name Zionist Union. And I have to see, I fail to see why. Mm-hmm. Zionism, first of all, Zionism is what we're about. This was what brought the state of Israel to life. And Zionism has always made equal place for the Arab citizens of Israel and believed in it and has worked for it. Unfortunately, it's being challenged today on a daily basis, we know that. But I want to say something else with your permission. Now I'm going to be attacked by Jafar and by Hillel and by Tamar and maybe even from Noam for not being leftist enough, for not being opposition enough, for not being something enough. They'll say a lot of things. And I want to say that this inner discussion of what's left and how should the left be, and is it leftist enough, or are we using the word left enough, etc., is part of our problem. Jeremy Benawi was sitting in this chair this morning and saying that part of the problem of our camp is that we're discussing, is the two-state solution still alive or not? And he said it's like someone's being rushed into the emergency room and the doctors, instead of just treating him, are standing above him and saying, should we help him, should we not help him, should we save him or should we not save him? That is exactly what we're doing in the left when we're trying to constantly attack one another and constantly try to find the right, accurate, one way to be a leftist or an opposition. I think it's very clear. This camp is about a political agreement with the Palestinian, a just agreement with the Palestinian. It's about a welfare state for the citizens of Israel, all of the citizens of Israel, and it's about freedom of religion in Israel, a separation of state and religion as much as possible. We are an alternative. We need to stand together and work for this alternative. We've been doing that. And when Haaretz decides to join this effort, it will be very helpful too.
Thank you. Jafar, first of all, I want you to respond to, if you want, of course, to what Merav said. And second, I would like to ask you, can the Arabs in Israel join forces with Zionist parties in establishing a significant and strong left-wing camp?
Look, first we have 15% of the voters in Israel are Palestinian voters, Arab voters. And in the last election, this camp was the only good news of the last election. We expect the Jewish progressive forces to get 36%. Do your best. We just need 36% of the Jews to become progressive Jews. That's it. It's not so complicated, guys. It's not, the problem is not in the Arab community. I think the problem is how the progressive Jewish left is out, how they talk to the Jews themselves. Like why the Mizrahi community again and again is voting for Shas, Likud, Kahlon. Why the Jewish left today fail to talk to the Russian community. So even if we will do better than what we did in the last election as Arab community, we did 13 seats, okay? We are the third political power today in Israel, but we are not really partners of the Israeli left. I will give you an example. Some good Arabs, even one of the ladies that I know, her uncle served in the Labour Party. Her uncle was a minister. She fell in love with a Palestinian guy from Gaza. She has to leave the country because there is something called the citizenship law that unfortunately even the Labour Party didn't understand the implication of this law in the life. We are 1.5 million Palestinians that have to be isolated in the middle of Israel, isolated from the other Palestinians and isolated from the Arab region. We would like to bring a new discourse of normalizing Israel, opening Israel, not walls again. The walls, the separation walls around Gaza have been promoted by Haim Ramon, by the Israeli left somehow, or center left. What we would like to promote is a new discourse. And thanks God that we are coming to New York, all of us, to start this dialogue between the Arab community and the Israeli progressive forces. It's about time to understand. We lost the last election, and there is no new strategy. Now it's about time to sit today and to say, okay, in 2 years, probably there will be another election in Israel. It's not slogans. You have to make a work plan. You have to come with a new discourse. You have to talk about living together. If you want only to talk about Jewish state, you will play to the hands of Bibi Netanyahu and his friends. There is a professional 300,000 settlers. They target us as Arab community, the Bedouin community, of course the left. And we are not professionals like them. And it's about time that we design a new discourse of living together, discourse of shared future, discourse of social justice in Israel. It's not bad, you know, housing in Israel is becoming amazing. You can't buy a house in Tel Aviv and not in Haifa. And if we will change it, you know, nobody, if somebody think that there is illusion, that you can have, you know, housing prices, normal housing prices, and still you can have occupation. You can.
Can you recognize the Jewish state?
I can recognize the right of the Jewish people. I can recognize the right of the Jewish people for self-determination with full recognition of minority rights inside Israel. I understand the needs. We are the only. Thanks. We are the only Palestinians and the only Arabs that speak Hebrew. We have linguistic and physical and mental accessibility to the Jews. We know the fears. We understand the Holocaust, maybe in some cases better than Jews themselves. You know, I was talking to some Jewish immigrants from some Arab countries that say, you know, terrible things about the Holocaust. But if we want to live together, it can't be, you know, this general, who's Jew? Me's a Yehudi. You know, this whole discussion about between probably you and her to identify what is the Jewish state. It's Haredi state, it's like a Reform Jewish state. Which Jewish state is that? There is self-determination need of the Jews in Israel, and there is self-determination need of the Palestinians. And to bring this discourse with minority rights protection, we have to work together to build a new discourse and to come to the public with a new discourse. Otherwise, we will lose also the next election.
Thank you. I want to ask you another question regarding what you said. Many Israelis, Arab leaders, are much more critical of the Zionist left than of the right, which has taken real and damaging actions against Arabs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a government now,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I won't quote Muhammad Zhalka, you know.
Jamal.
Sorry, Jamal Zhalka, sure. He attacked one of the members of
Stav Shafir.
Yeah, Stav Shafir. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, if someone says that Benjamin Netanyahu or member of Knesset Avigdor Lieberman is better than Yitzhak Herzog or Merav Michaeli, you know, it can give the impression that he doesn't want to solve the problem, but rather, I don't know, continue the blame game.
Look, we are not teenagers. Okay, we have to find a solution and give our people hope. I think the rift between the Arab community and the Israeli left started in '96. And it was professional work done by the settlers. And when some groups in the Arab community boycotted the 1996 prime minister election, Shimon Peres, was very angry with the Arab community. There was some reconciliation process between the Arab community and the left in '99 election. 95% of the Arab community supported Ehud Barak. A year later, we lost 13 Arab citizens in the streets of Israel that were shot by the Israeli police in October 2000. We are a community, you know, imagine that the Jewish American community will be targeted in the way that we have been targeted in October 2000. And since then, 96, 2000, there is a rift between the Arab community and the Israel left, Zionist left, let's say. It's a rift that there is historical reasons, but there is a rift also between the, you know, it's not the only rift, between the Mizrahi community, and I refer to Noam as Mizrahi,
get to it.
but also between the Mizrahi community and the Israeli left. And the Israeli left, it's about time to look at its relationship with the Arab community. with the Russian community, with the Mizrahi community, and even with the Haredi community. It's about time to re-evaluate and re-strategize if you want to win the next election. I don't think that we have issues that we need to debate with the Israeli left, and we have to do it. Not in New York, but in Haifa. We have to do it, and we are not doing that in Haifa.
Let's go for it. Thank you. Tamar Zandberg, Meretz, member of Knesset of Meretz. I would like to ask you, the progressive liberal camp, we can all agree on that, is for which Meretz is a prominent representative, is growing smaller and losing strength. Is it possible you are doing something wrong?
Okay, first of all, we have been losing elections, which means, that politics is the one field where the client is always right, which means there's no point in blaming our voters. Obviously, we did something wrong and we have to fix it in order to win next time. But I want to also disagree with your assumption that we are growing that small or such a marginal minority. I think this has been repeatedly going on here in this conference since the beginning about how not marginal and about how influential movement we are in Israel and here in the United States. I think that I want to start with two working assumptions that lead us, and from there we should think about the new strategy that I totally agree with Jafar. First of all, Israel and the Israeli left is in a crisis. Israel is in a moral crisis with growing racism, violence around, growing social gaps and inability to reach equality and justice for all. And that goes around all aspects and all issues of policy. And I belong to those who does not feel that there is a difference between policy or solving a conflict or social economic policy or a separation of state and religion or environmental justice or feminism.
So why the voters don't come?
So, and the voters vote, and the voters are not that stupid, but the question is what kind of alternative we pose for those voters. Now, another working assumption is that the solution relies in change of policy, and that means a left-wing policy that would be a thorough and coherent alternative to the right-wing policy that we see now in government that obviously is putting Israel in danger. Now, the question is, do we as a camp, and I'm talking about the Israeli opposition, which is a very wide opposition. It's a very narrow majority for the government right now, only 61. If one Knesset member is upset or is sick, the government cannot work in the Knesset. They cannot pass their laws and their policies, and we have to remember that. We are not as weak as we think. But the question is, do our leaders pose a very, very clear and attractive alternative, or do they keep appealing to the right-wing, what they think is the right-wing voters? For example, the leaders of our camp, the ones who wish to be the next prime minister, the next ministers of the left-wing government, when the Intifada started, they said we should curfew the occupied territories and prevent Palestinians with working permits to get in. Take the Iranian deal, for example. We heard constantly here in the US that all Israelis oppose the deal. To have a right-wing policy, we have a right-wing leaders. We don't need the left-wing leaders, the ones who are supposed to pose the alternative, to do the same.
But you keep attacking, the Labour Party for not doing their job as the opposition's leader. I mean, how does it serve? Doesn't it undermine the goal of creating a strong and united camp?
Yeah, we need to create a strong and united camp that would be truthful to a strong and united values that we all share. If the strong and united camp is serving the right-wing camp, then maybe we don't need such a strong and united camp after all. And I want to make a point very, very clear. This is not a question of left test. We don't test anyone in the entrance to the, you know, with the test, and you have to check the boxes. This is about the future of the state of Israel. Can we propose a different alternative that will be just, equal, solve the conflict, ensure social policy that would be right for everybody, including Arab citizens of Israel, including all of us. And I have the feeling that some of our leaders feel that the way to the polls go through attaching themselves to the right instead of bravely, and sometimes it means being braver than we are, because, you know, the right wing is delegitimizing us. So it starts with the Arabs, it goes to the lefties, and the next ones are going to be the center. So the leaders are thinking they should cling to the right, and the ones next to them are keeping silent. That's, you know, that's not a way of posing a moral alternative, and that's not a way of winning elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe now we will just, you know, in this
let's hear first of all what Hillel wants to say.
No, I would like to hear your response.
Don't worry. I want to deprive is right. But if you want to respond after that, it's okay. I mean, we talked about it as Jafar said and Tamar too. You didn't oppose laws like the one who prohibits Palestinians' family reunification. You supported the anti-bill, which escalates the repression against all Palestinians, not only terrorists. So you can understand those voices. And what can you say?
I can say that, I don't know how about you, but I know that I agree with Tamar. I totally agree with Tamar that it's about the future of Israel. And it's about winning the elections. The genuine, what I said here this morning, there is genuine political will to reach a solution regarding the Palestinians, and yes, to have social justice within Israel, including freedom of religion. And when we have freedom of religion, then there is no question of what kind of a Jewish state that we want. I want a state, a democratic state, which is the homeland of the Jewish people. This is what it is for me. This is what we are committed to.
He recognized it.
And that's not Jewish state.
I have no beef.
It's totally different.
I have no beef with Jafar. He
new.
knows that. No, he's angry at me because I was sick and I didn't come to his convention last night.
No, we tried to do this dialogue in Nazareth, and we failed.
It's not political at all, it's only personal.
Yes, exactly, it's only personal.
Okay.
But other than the convention thing, we have no beef. We are totally committed to that. We may differ on the tactics. And yes, we may not be perfect. I know Meretz always think they are perfect, but we are not, and we do not aspire to be perfect. We just aspire to do the right thing, to get into power, to come to power, to do what we all believe in. And the fact that the tactics become the main issue, and the fact that over the tactics there is much too much noise inside what should be this big camp of alternative is a shame.
Thank you. Hillel, you look to me quite eager to,
yes.
Okay.
I agree with you, Merav. We shouldn't focus on the tactics. And the question of whether certain messages should be more centrist and certain messages should be more left-wing, and how would we, curtail another mandate from here or there is obviously a tactical question. But the essential question, and this is something that I would like to ask you about, is what does labor stand for today? Because for me, it's very hard to differentiate between the positions of the leadership of the labor and the positions of the people in power today. So here you stand and you talk about the occupation. You don't talk about the occupation that much in Israel. I can, by the way, present the same critique to Tamar, and I would like here to challenge the audience a bit, because if we're talking about freedom of religion, why do you go and dance in an occupied territory with a talit and say, this is the first time you enjoyed davening. That's not about separation of church and state. It's about a different thing altogether. What is the position of the labor and the opposition vis-a-vis the Jewish diaspora? What kind of involvement would you like to espouse here? These are questions that at the moment are very, very blurry. Now we can talk in general titles about social equality and about final status agreement, etc. But there is, I think, to me, not enough differentiation.
Thank you. Tamar, I will let you respond. Do you want now or after that? Okay.
You're the moderator.
Okay. Let's move to Noam. I want to hear you too. Noam, you grew up in a community. Let me introduce you. You grew up in a community called Oasis for Peace, right? This is a very special place in Israel. It's the only place in Israel where Jews, Muslims, and Christians choose to live together.
Yeah,
right?
we still don't know why they chose it, but they did.
No, it looks like a fun place, actually. I don't know. And she's now the director of Interpeace, which is affiliated with the UN. You talk a lot, I mean, when we talked about opening up, Jafar talked about it a little bit, and also Tamar, opening up the left wing to new groups of supporters. So it's not composed entirely of secular Ashkenazi Jews from unique sector. This isn't actually a new idea, and yet no matter how much effort left-wing parties invents, nothing changes, actually, as Jafar said. Do you have any practical suggestions to make it work?
I think I overheard a conversation before, a few people around the lunch table, and they said that this panel is the $1 million question. And we keep repeating ourselves. And I also keep repeating myself. We need to recalculate. We need alternatives. We need. The peace camp is dying. We shouldn't even, deny if the two-state solution is still alive or not. For me, to be honest, if I am not urgently occupying the dangerous vacuum that the failure, unfortunately, of the two-state solution has created, I think this is being a real traitor to Israel. And when I grew up in Wahda Salam Neve Shalom, it's like the heart of the peace camp. And the peace camp, to some extent, has always been my home. I grew up to see it, unfortunately, failing. And here we are repeating again that it has failed. But I never knew that me getting into the kind of work that I'm doing today with my personal identity will open up what this alternative for me means. Mm-hmm. Because we don't just say that we need alternatives and we need to recalculate. You need to embody the alternative. You need to be right now the alternative. Merav and I had a discussion last night about the tribal speech of President Rivlin. And this is a true, it's someone is high up in Israeli standards is giving us a mandate, a real mandate to start calculating what does it mean demographically, what does it mean politically. The task of implementing what this means and what the new Israeli order means is my task and my generation and my generation's task. In the summer of 2014, something very painful hit me. There were limited demonstrations against the war in Gaza in Tel Aviv, and a very famous rapper called The Shadow. Anyone heard of him? A strong bully. He's my cousin, okay? My mother was born in Iran. I have a very conservative Persian family, and I knew that he's protesting against the left-wing demonstration. I wanted to join the left-wing demonstration to protest against, and the fear of the left-wing activist that he's mobilizing right-wing activists to beat them up was so real, I wasn't allowed to enter the left-wing demonstration. I couldn't find any of my friends to recognize me, and in American terms, it's racial profiling. At that moment, the police would not let me be in the middle, so I had to cross the street and stand with my cousin, who is this right-wing bully. And this is not my story, and I'm not saying this to to talk about myself. I'm mobilizing and I'm echoing a bigger story than me, and I'm quite big. I'm like 6', so it's my generation who are living in between the different buffer zone of identities and are desperately seeking for this kind of alternatives that we are talking about. And for me, being a Middle Eastern Jew and also speaking fluent Arabic, Jafar was sure I'm Palestinian, like many people, I always get this question in conferences, are you Palestinian? Why a Mizrahi-looking Jewish woman can't be here without being asked if she's a Palestinian? Why can't I open my mouth in Arabic without people asking me if I was at the intelligence forces?
So what can be done?
What can be done? First of all, you think of the alternative, you envision an alternative, and your first task is to embody this alternative. You embody an alternative solution. And you know how many times I am,
And how do you do that?
I think, a part of my frustration, because throughout my work, I work with populations in the Israeli society, unfortunately under the radar, that have been systematically excluded from the peace process and also self-excluded. And the self-excluded part is a very important part because there is a lot of potential. We talk about the Russian-speaking community in Israel, the ultra-Orthodox, the moderate religious Zionism, the Palestinian citizens of Israel who were always overlooked as real partners. It was always Ramallah and Tel Aviv speaking to each other.
Do you think that the left party's leadership should be replaced by those people as an act of...
But this is our real task. It's not. I cannot guarantee that a Mizrahi prime minister will provide
that people will be more comfortable, more convenient to vote those parties because they will see someone like them in the leadership.
Yeah. We need to clear the stage, and we need to assume roles that might be different. We need to start thinking, where are the winds in Israel blowing? Where is the danger? We are not the problem. This is a very optimistic and full of energy, and thank you, everyone for your energies and thoughts, but this is not where the problem is. Our task is to be right now working very seriously under the radar with those actors inside these communities who want to stay legitimate to a large constituency but are not afraid to speak a different rhetoric. And a part of my frustration...
bring them to our...
Yeah. But a part of my frustration is that we have no timing and no conditions right now. But it doesn't mean that we cannot do this work under the radar. And there is potential under the radar. There are ultra-Orthodox rabbis who have religious rulings that could be a basis for a political solution. There is also, I think, in some of the opening speeches here, there is a very big demonizing of the religious Zionist community. It's not right. It's not strategic at all. And we need to open up. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I will ask Hillel, and then Hillel, I want to ask you, in the current Israeli landscape, who do you think can be the left wing's potential allies?
So again, I think that one thing has to do with rebuilding ourselves as a camp, and a lot has been said, and I agree with most of what has been said. And the other thing is to reach out and try to cut strategic alliances in the way that, for example, Ben-Gurion did with the religious Zionists in 1937. We have to go to constituencies that are more or less cohesive and try to offer them, as a cohesive camp ourselves, a strategic allegiance that has to do with specific interests and specific prices to be paid, etc. This barter doesn't begin after you win an election and try to cut a coalition deal. Jafar and Merav were talking about...
Netanyahu calls the ultra-Orthodox his natural allies.
So I see, for example, here a natural alliance. Why not sit now and start building this shelf coalition agreement? Let's see that happening.
I don't think that it's enough here. I don't think it's enough.
Let's begin with writing
the Arab community is a very important actor. We took the lead. We organized ourselves as a community. But it's about time that the Israeli Ashkenazi left allow also progressive forces in the Mizrahi community, in the Russian community, in different communities to start look at the voting trends in the Mizrahi community in the Mediterranean. Arabs that immigrated from Arab countries.
But Jafar,
they voted for Kahlon and for Shas and for the Likud. It's about time to look for new
right,
allies
guys.
in these communities.
Sorry, Hillel, it's very interesting, but we need to, unfortunately, we need to close and really finish. I promise Tamar respond to.
Thank you. Just 3 quick closing remarks. First of all, Hillel, you asked me about the women of the wall and their struggle. Listen, I'm a secular woman. I don't pray and I don't use the talit. For me, I joined the Women of the Wall out of solidarity when they were attacked by the Israeli police, and when they were attacked by the rabbi of the Kotel, not letting them light the Chanukiah this Hanukkah and last Hanukkah. For me, this is a feminist and this is a pluralist struggle. I'm proud of going with them, even though the prayer doesn't mean anything to me. That's one. Second, thank you.
I would like to see more about religion.
I think you're right.
That.
Yeah, I think you're right.
More.
First of all, tactics against essence. I think we can take the very, very simple example of breaking the silence on this conference and around the attacks on President Rivlin and some of the speeches we have heard today. Listen, if a conference like that, if one of the activists of Breaking the Silence came to me on this conference and asked, there was one member of Knesset signing Knesset members on a letter to President Rivlin to avoid, to cancel his appearance here at this conference. And he said to me, maybe we can go and sign an alternative letter strengthening Rivlin and his appearance here in support of Breaking the Silence. And I said, well, apart from the 5 Meretz members, who do you think will sign? And I think if we as a camp think that standing up for breaking the silence is tactic versus essence, we are doing something wrong. And we should rethink about the essence of our values. That's second. And third, the new audiences. You know, in Hebrew, ke'alim chadashim, the new audiences, that's the buzzword, my last sentence, that's the buzzword in Israeli left. And I think, I think what the experience you went through is something for all of us to think about. In the same time, the activists that were inside the demonstration where you were profiled to enter, after the demonstration ended, they were beaten up by right-wing activists and chairs were hit in their heads because they're left-wing. So our biggest challenge is how to widen the tent, like we say in American English, and in the same time not losing our values. Because it's very easy to bend and to keep silent about certain things for the electorate, for the voters to come. You know what? If you're untruthful to yourself, they don't come. So you are morally wrong and politically unsuccessful. And this is our biggest challenge.
Thank you very much. This is...
No way, את חייבת לתת לי להגיד מילה.
Oh, come on, that was a perfect bottom line. So, okay, try to add...
I have to say one
just
thing.
Only really few words, because we really need to close up.
To go back to what you started with, by relating to what Noam said. Those who wouldn't let you, Noam, into that demonstration was not the left. It was the police.
No. It was the police electors of the demonstration.
It's very symbolic, because the thing that we're dealing with is Netanyahu saying in '96 that the leftists have forgotten what it means to be Jewish. And this is something that he's been cultivating extremely successfully ever since. And instead of fighting among ourselves, we should really think of what's essential and tactic and whatever in order to work together to bring about the right political will that we all share back to power in Israel. Together with you, who are our partners, and we are very, very grateful for this partnership. But it's really up to us to be able to work together, overcome all of these differences, and just do it.
Okay, let it be. Thank you very much. It was really interesting and delighted. Thank you.